Hello everyone, and today we have actually big news on the Xelor. He really needed these changes and honestly it looks good. I was a main Xelor for 15 years and I stopped playing because the class was just not good enough. And besides that, we also have a huge change in the Ecaflip. Honestly, I don't think it's a nerf, I honestly think it's a buff in my opinion. People were saying that Ecaflip was going to get a huge nerf. And these changes, honestly, it seemed that it was quite a nice buff, mainly for PvM. For PvP, there are a slight nerf on the erosion. Besides of that, we also have a huge change in Eliotrope and Sram and a few other classes. So let's dive into that. So here we have the changelog. I will leave the changelog below in the comments. Also, if you are French or even Portuguese, I'll have subtitles for you guys as well, and also for the English people as well. So this patch was actually very long. I will not go through everything. I will basically just say what improved or what got nerfed overall on the classes. But I will also do a video very soon progressing the Xelor from 1 to 100, for example, and doing dungeons, the dungeon bosses in those levels to see if Xelor actually can do the achievements and if can actually be helpful now, okay? So Xelor. Again, I'll not go through everything, but so you guys have an idea, all the cooldowns got much better in lower levels, or even overall they got just buffed. For example, here the teleportation, it was 5 to 3, now it's just 2 for all the ranks. So this is a huge improvement because no Xelor would wait 3 turns to get the teleportation. It will just kind of force themselves to do a telefrag so they can have the teleportation sooner. Now the Complice, which is the summon, the first summon that you get from Xelor, now it becomes a mobile summon, so it will be able to gain movement points and just move in the battlefield. Besides that, it will also reflect 75% of the damage that it takes to the enemies surrounding, okay? I think it's interesting, but honestly I did not like the fact that now you have less range to place the Complice. And honestly I don't know how useful it will be to just move it around, to be fair, because you can always summon one every single turn. Then we have also a lot of different spells that got the different names. But the big thing here is the conservation. So the conservation here, now it has a completely different operation. Before, you just basically, if you use on an enemy, I think the damage of the enemies will be lower, but then on the next turn you'll get resistances. So now you always get resistance when you apply it. And besides that, you also, whoever attacks you will get -1 action point on their next turn. And also, whoever attacks you will receive -1 action points, stackable 3 times. That's the overall of the Xelor now at the moment. So there are a lot of different spells. You have all of the elemental ways will have a reduction of action points. Obviously the chance one is still the biggest one, but I don't think that the other ones need reduction of action points. So now the rewind and the referral got just into one spell. They were very similar, so now they just fused one, and then now they added another one called the Afterglow. At least this is the translation here that we have. But it basically, you apply the remnant state on the target. And what this basically does is that it will teleport the target to their previous position for each movement points that they use. So this is honestly quite interesting. So basically, if you use all your movement points in your turn, you'll basically return to the position where you were, or the ally or the enemy was. But if you teleport around and use a few movement points, you can really control where you want to go in the end of your turn. Or I don't know, this is specifically saying in the ally, but I think this will be actually super interesting. It doesn't say here, but you can actually cast it on yourself. So for example, if you want to use on yourself, just be careful that this state here just starts to apply once you cast this spell. So if you cast only after you used all your movement points, in the end of your turn, you will not go back any position, okay? So for example, if you want to just go back 1 or 2 positions, for example, let's say that you use the spell, you move 1 movement point, and then you teleport to the enemy's team, and then you pass the turn there, you'll go back all the way back to where you were. This will give a lot of mobility to the Xelor, but you also have the rewind as a variant. Besides that, we also have the counter and the temporal shield that got fused together. So if we check here and you see the temporal and the counter here, the counter you'll basically return you reflect the damage, and the temporal shield, basically, if the enemy attacks you, both of you will return to the previous position. Okay, so now you have basically fused everything together. The mummification here, which will be the spell that puts everyone in telefrag, also got different. Now it basically reduces the duration of effects on the user, makes them unattackable, and increase their movement points and AP reduction. This is huge, because if someone casts gravity on you, you can use these to basically get out of it, okay? So that's actually quite nice, I like it. But mummification will not be the only spell that will do this. The 25th hour disables the rooted, unmovable, and gravity states on the caster for the current turn, and apply the telefrag state to everyone. Guys, I was telling this to every single person that Xelor needs a spell that removes the gravity from himself, and now we actually have it, okay? So this will basically be the mummification, but also adding the disables the gravity states and the movable and rooted. And God, this looks nice. So as you can see here, it looks nice, right? The new mummy here. I like it. Good job, Ankama, good job. Finally, Xelor will not be as useless as it was. Honestly, this is a big change, a really big change. Also, the embalming spell now got removed, which was the variant of mummification, I think. We'll just put someone with telefrag. And the variant now of the synchro is the bell, the biggest spell of here, the glass one, okay? I don't know how I feel about this. Both of them are really good spells, but I think the synchro is way better than the bell. And now we come to the elemental spells. And before we start, we have something huge, which is all movement spells, all movement effects are played before damage. So basically, you can just teleport someone, and this will be applied before you do damage. This is huge to do achievements. This is huge to do challenges. I like this change. Doesn't seem much, but it honestly helps a lot with achievements. And now, as you can see here, if you open here, we have all the spells are super different, okay? So we have the Disruption, Frostbite, Souvenir, and Xelor Punch. So this is basically the same as the Frostbite from the last version. So, but the Frostbite now is a chance spell, and you also remove AP parry from the enemy, and you can only cast it in line. And the Souvenir here, it's basically the Frostbite, the Agility Frostbite, so it's basically the same. But then the Disruption here, you can use it behind a wall or an object or an obstacle, whatever it is, on an enemy. It is honestly super good. This will be such a big thing. The only thing is that the range is not modifiable, and the agility one, the range is modifiable, okay? So let's start things off with the Fireway, okay? So the Shadowy Beam, which is basically an Earth spell. Now you get it really early in the game as well, and you basically do the same thing as it was the Earth spell. Whenever you do damage, you remove the telefrag, and you apply the telefrag everyone around, okay? So in the 2-cell circle, this is actually super interesting because you'll be able to apply the telefrag way easier. Instead of just like always switching people around, you can actually apply the telefrag without actually doing a telefrag. It also said that it does damage in area, so this is honestly seems super good. So let's see how this will be actually in game, okay? And now we have the Temporal Dust. It's pretty much the same. The only thing is that when you cast it, you also do damage if the enemies are not in telefrag. But to teleport the enemies, they need actually to be in the telefrag, okay? Then we have the Xelor Sandglass, which is quite different. Now you remove 2 action points and the people cannot dodge. And now you also apply this Sablier state. This is in French, right? But the Sablier state is basically whenever you do damage with this spell, you apply some type of poison that will target 3 turns after you cast this spell, okay? So this damage that you'll do, it will be a damage in an area of effect, and as you can see, you just need 2 action points to use this spell, and does 28 to 30 damage without critting, okay? Besides that, you can combine this poison if the hourglass, it's in different turns. For example, if you cast in 1 turn, then it's there, the poison, then you cast it again in another turn, and there is again the poison. And for each telefrag that you consume on the enemy that is with this poison, you will reduce 1 turn. For example, you use this spell and the enemy will receive the damage in 3 turns, okay? So then you apply a telefrag and then you consume the telefrag from the target, then it will decrease to 2 turns. So this is honestly interesting. For just 2 action points, you remove 2 action points from the enemy. So basically, you waste 2 and you remove 2 from the enemy. So it's basically you do not waste any action points with this spell because you're removing from yourself by using this spell and also from the enemy, and then you also do a bunch of damage. Then we have the Dark Ray that was an Earth spell and it cost 5 action points, and now instead of being a 3 square line, it's a 4 square line. I know that it says here 3 square line, but it's a 4 square line, and it increases the base damage plus 12 base damage for each enemy in a telefrag state on the line, okay? So you can really do a lot of damage with this spell. It seems very, very interesting. And now we have the Temporal Suspension. So basically with this spell here, you do not unbewitch anymore. But now we have a different effect. So whenever you attack an enemy, the enemy goes to the previous position that it was. And besides that, before the damage hits or before the enemy gets teleported, all the enemies around in a 2 cell, this spell will go to the nearest enemy and then apply the effect again. So if there is anyone near that enemy, the second enemy, then it will also jump to the next one and the next one and the next one until there's no enemies around. And this will always be applied before the enemy is teleported to the previous position, okay? So this is quite interesting. Now you do not need a telefrag to do this kind of thing because you also have a spell like this in agility. And now we do not need actually to have telefrag states on the enemies to actually be able to bounce this damage, which is actually nice because I think Xelor needs more AoE damage. So now let's go for agility. And now we have the souvenir that I already explained. Besides that, we have the Shriveling, and the Shriveling looks good because you can accumulate this plus 6 base damage 3 times as long as the enemies are in a telefrag state, and you also don't need to use it online, which is a big thing. Before, the Shriveling was always used online. The Temporal Distortion here, now you do a symmetric teleportation and then you teleport to the previous position. I did not understand really well how this works, but I think it's to facilitate telefrag. You just basically teleport symmetrically and then you teleport to the previous position. I don't know if it like you just switch around and then you switch and then you switch back. So I think it's interesting mainly to just like do damage and mostly to generate an easy telefrag. Then you have the Drying Up, which is the removal action point in the agility way, and it's always removes 2 action points, you cannot avoid it. Besides that, now it's your Unbewitching. Before it was the other one that unbewitches, and so basically they kind of switched a bit the effects. And so you remove the telefrag and you unbewitch for just 3 action points. Is actually huge. The Pendulum is pretty much the same. The thing is that you now can cast it even if you are in a gravity state. You just do not teleport, okay? You can cast, you can do the damage, but you do not teleport. The enemies that are in gravity will not, or even yourself, will not do anything to them, okay? Then we have the Embalming, which is a new spell, and it's quite interesting. So you basically, what you do is just you apply the state, but if it's not in telefrag, it will not do anything. So you first need to apply a telefrag. So then you just apply the effect, and then on the next turn, on your next turn, you'll basically do an extra damage on the end of your turn. But the enemy needs to be on the same place. It doesn't need to be this enemy in particular. So, but here, it does not appear here, but it should appear like a glyph. And so on the next turn, on your next turn, you'll basically, if the enemy or each one enemy ends the turn there, it will receive more damage. So minus 32, it was because of that spell that I use. So this is interesting because it allows you to be more creative. Whenever you use this spell, you kind of need to put an enemy there in the same cell. So I think it's quite interesting, and the damage is quite nice. For just 2 action points, you can do 36 to 38 damage, so it's honestly quite good. And it's also a good way to remove telefrags. So for just 2 action points, you can just remove a telefrag from the enemy, which can then stack for the Knell here or for another spell that you have. So now let's go for the water spells. So here we have the slowdown. The slowdown is pretty much the same. You remove 1 action point, and if the enemy is in telefrag, you steal 1 action point. So you can just use this spell for just 1 action point, so it's actually quite interesting. And you can do it twice, so it honestly seems quite good. Then we have the Petrification here that now costs just 4 action points, and the stack can just be 2 times. So you can reduce this spell to just 2 action points, which is actually quite nice. Before you could reduce 3 times. So it would cost 5 AP and you'll reduce it to 2 action points. So now I think it's even better because you can reduce it to 2 action points really easily. And also you remove 2 action points. Now we have a new spell, which is the Reflect, and you basically just switch position with the enemy. And the good thing is that you just generate a telefrag. So it's a really easy spell to do, and you just cost 2 action points basically because you'll generate a telefrag. So if you have 4 action points, you'll just get 2 back, okay? So now let's check the time theft. The time theft is pretty simple. You just teleport the target to the previous position, but besides that, you also teleport yourself to the previous position. So you teleport yourself and the enemy to the previous position. And then to finish, we have the water clock. So in this one, you remove 3 action points and you get 2 action points if the enemy is in telefrag for 1 turn. And then you consume the telefrag on the enemy, okay? So now let's finish with the Earth state. And so Xelor Punch is the same. Now the gear, you can use it on yourself. You teleport yourself as well if you use it near you, if it basically the AoE affects you. Then we have the cog, and the cog is pretty much the same, but it has a ring AoE, okay? So it will teleport symmetrically everyone that is in the ring of this spell. Then we have the hand, and the hand is pretty different. It was a fire spell, right? And now it's an earth spell. And now what happens is that everyone that is in the hand state on the battlefield, you do damage to everyone with this spell, okay? So you apply the hand state on an enemy, and then you apply on another enemy, it will also do damage to the other one, and then if you apply it to another enemy, it will do damage to everyone that is with this state, okay? And you can extend this state for 2 turns if the enemy that when you apply this effect, it's in telefrag. And also you remove 2 action points, but you don't remove 2 action points from everyone in the state, you just do damage to everyone in the state, okay? So now we have the clock. The clock was the water spell, right? And so you now remove the telefrag state, and if you do it, you do more damage with the spell. Now we have the loss of motivation. It's pretty much the same, so you also unbewitch before, and now you also unbewitch. But besides that, you also remove 2 action points. So overall, I like the new changes. I think they will help a lot. Mainly the utilitarian spells, I think they are more accessible. So they overall increase the flexibility of the spells, either increasing the range or removing some cooldown. And a lot of spells, honestly, they look super good, mainly the one that you remove the gravity from yourself, which is the big problem. And these spells here in the beginning also seem super interesting to use. So I cannot wait to start seeing agility Xelors with Matte, Tofu, Cloak and Toadies, because this spell here will be insane in lower levels, to be honest. And this Shadowy Beam actually seems very interesting. So let me know in the comments what you guys think, and let's go on to the next class. So now we have the Ecaflip. In my opinion, the Ecaflip is honestly, people were expecting quite a big nerf. In my opinion, I think it was a slight buff. So as you can see, the top card now, it will always be 5 range. Then you have also a lot of effects that just changed a bit how they trigger the effects of Ebony or Ivory Dofus. But now here the Blackjack, Baraka, Jas and Belot, which are like the spells that you remove your own cards of the same suit. For example, if you have cards on your hand that are Earth and then use the Belot, then you remove all the Earth cards from your hand, okay? So now you do not remove erosion with these spells, and the Blackjack, which was the fire spell that would remove erosion. Now basically you just put the target with the penalty with healing, so you put basically anti-heal penalty on the enemy. So now the Queen's card is now drawn in all cases. So before, if you would remove a card, you will just remove the cards from the element and you will not draw a Queen card. And now even if you remove, you still draw a Queen card. That's actually such a huge difference. I like it a lot. And besides that, you can get more range with these spells. They were actually a bit limited with the range, so I'm glad that you can actually have more range with them. Besides that, if you already have the Queen card, apparently you do not play it, so you don't put on the table if there's any other card from the same suit on your hand. I don't know exactly how this will work. Let me know in the comments if you guys try. I will also give it a try in the next days. Now the good pick. This was needed. So now you refund the action points every time you cast. So when I was playing Ecaflip, it was a bit annoying that only the first cast was refunded. And now you refund every single cast. Is honestly quite insane. Then you draw 4 cards with the redistribution. For example, if you have 0 cards on your hand, you draw 4 cards. This is honestly insane because before you just draw the same card that you would add even that you would have in your hand. But even if you have 2 cards, you'll discard. You actually don't discard. You play the hand, so you play these 2 cards and then you draw 4 cards. How insane is that, honestly? Now the smell, which is the spell that you get more movement points and remove action points, and then it switches on the next turn. Now you play the hand, and then on the next turn, you retrieve the table. Guys, you have no idea how much this was needed. I love the fact that now on the All or Nothing, you retrieve your table when you cast it, and now you have more spells that can do that. This is honestly super cool because it allows you to get more buffs in less time. The same thing here for the Wheel of Fortune. Now the Predation here was the spell that you basically cast it around you. You can cast anywhere in the map as long as you have the range, so you don't need to cast it just on yourself. The thing is that the range was a bit lower, but they increased the erosion from 50% to 20%. Then here we have the Ecaflip Toro. And the Ecaflip Toro I was already enjoying before this change here, and now it became even better. So, for the people that don't know, this is basically the roulette. You just draw a random card, but now whenever you draw a random card, you'll have a specific effect for just the Ecaflip. So in this case, all the spade cards will cost -1 action points. So let's see, for example, if in this one, if you draw this one, all the jacks cards, all the 2 action points card will just be 1 action point. This is honestly quite interesting, and you can also even get the spades card if you are agility. All your agility spells will be -1 action point, and it also has an effect for everyone in the battlefield. Okay, in this case, increases the target's movement point when it gives shield. So you still have to do some type of challenge to get a bonus. So in this case, you need to give shield, and it increases the movement point. So this is honestly super cool. So I don't know whoever said that this was a nerf, but this seems like a huge buff. The only thing is that the erosion on these spells are not anymore present, but still it's such a good thing. Then we have just a few things. The Earth build here in the Huppermage was a bit nerfed. Now you can actually cast it 3 times the morph if you have the Elementary, which is an equipment from the class. Then we have the Dart here. The Dart here is just at 3 action points. This changes everything, and I will explain it why. Because the Dart is a mix spell, so you do earth damage and then you do water damage. Why this is important? Because the Ember spell, which you do fire and then air damage, is a 4 action points. And before these, the multi-critic combo will be you do the 2 action points earth and then you'll do the Ember. So in this case, you do the fusion between earth and fire, so the enemy already gets more damage. But with this Dart here, you can do the same thing for just 5 action points. So you do the 2 action points fire spell, and then you do the Dart for just 3. So this will actually be interesting. I'm quite curious to try this. And now, guys, I'm sorry, Elio mains, and I'm sorry, Viper. Also, guys, if you don't know, Viper Dofus is also a content creator, international content creator, and he also does really good videos. He mainly does PvP and endgame content, so check him out. And his main is actually Eliotrope, and the 2% went to 1%. It is actually a huge nerf, guys. I'm really sorry, Eliotropes, but yeah, this is actually a big nerf. So now we have the Sram, and the Sram here got quite a big buff overall. The movement points of the invisibility now will last 2 turns, which is honestly nice, and the movement points now will just have 2. So it's a nerf and a buff at the same time. So I don't know, guys, let me know what you guys think, but I think having 2 action points for 1 more turn, it's quite a nice buff. But now the Mist got more interval on the cast, but the Double and the Conspirator got a less 1 interval. I think this is a huge buff. They are super important for the gameplay of the Sram. Then you have some spells that also got some lifesteal as well, and then you have, for example, the Muddy Trap that now does not have lifesteal because you have so many water spells that do that. You also have some different types of spells that have different variants. And as you can see, all the equipments that would allow you to cast 1 more trap per turn, now it does not happen anymore. I think this GP here is the range. Exactly, this is the range. PO means portée or something like that in French, but in English means range. And then the Ozymodes here got a small buff here in the tandem animal. Also we have the Forgelance here with a buff in the early levels. The Kra here with a bit of a nerf in the gravity arrow, which is quite nice. the brewing as well. So I think we are kind of see some nerfs. If I'm not mistaken, this one here, the brewing also puts you in gravity. We also see here the Eliotrope. Now it doesn't have range modifiable on the gravity spell. Also the Neurosis here, I think this is a gravity spell, if I'm not mistaken. So as you can see here, overall guys, Xelor got a huge buff in my opinion. And also the enemies, its own enemies in PvP will have a tougher time now to put gravity. So guys, let me know what you guys think. This is honestly super cool. I will bring very soon a video of me playing with Xelor in the first levels to see how it goes. And I'm super excited to try this new Xelor. The only thing that I don't like about the new Xelor is that you do not possess any type of healing yourself. So once you get lower HP, there's no way with your spells that you'll get your health back. And honestly, there's so many different classes now that get lifesteal. Why not introducing like 1 lifesteal or 2 lifesteals to the class to improve a bit is gameplay? Because honestly, in some PVM, you really need to get some HP back. And if you don't have some spells that can allow you that, you really depend on equipments or on your allies. And even before this rework, you had the water clock that will have some lifesteal, and now you really don't have anything. So guys, Ankama, Papino, if you're seeing this, please give 1 or 2 spells to Xelor. It's really necessary for endgame PVM mainly. So guys, I hope you guys have enjoyed. Please subscribe if you like my content, and see you next time.